Hey, what's up guys, it's Thunderstruck115, and today we are going to be ranking all the Treyarch COD Zombies games from worst to best, in my opinion. I realized I hadn't really made COD Zombies content in a while, and I figured this would be a fun one to do. So, ground rules, number 1, we're only ranking the Treyarch games. Number 2, I am not including Vanguard in these rankings for the simple fact that I do not own the game. Though, if I were to rank it based on what I have played, that being a few matches of Duran Fang and Terra Maledicta, it would be in dead last. And number 3, I'm primarily ranking this on my enjoyment of those games from a gameplay perspective. So things like the core gameplay mechanics, the maps, and the amount of content are going to have far more weight than something like story or atmosphere, which, while I will take into consideration, is not going to have too much weight in my rankings. So let's kick this off with our number 6 spot, which is going to be World at War. I don't really think this is a surprise to anyone. It's not that I don't enjoy World at War, because I do, but it's a classic case of first game syndrome, where the first entry in any specific series is just bound to be outshone by its successors. Without World at War, we obviously wouldn't have Call of Duty Zombies, and I'm glad it exists, and it is fun to go back to from time to time. There's only 4 maps, and of those 4 maps, only one of them has Pack-a-Punch, that being Der Riese. Now, I think Der Riese is a fantastic map. One of my favorites, actually. But not Verrückt and Shino Numa, because they don't have nearly as much as later maps, because again, the formula was still being established. It means I don't really feel like going back and playing them anywhere near as often. That's not to say that they aren't fun, because they are. But the lack of features that are present in pretty much almost every map that came after it really shows itself here. There's just not as much to do. The game is also kinda buggy. Things like the gravity zombies or the Wunderwaffe taking your jug on Der Riese. Again, I can have a lot of fun with this game, especially on Der Riese. And I do think that something World at War does better than anything that came after it is atmosphere. Like, this is the only one that I'd actively say feels creepy. But pretty much everything else that World at War does has been done since, and done better. Moving into our number 5 spot, and this might be a little controversial, but Black Ops Cold War. I know many people love this game, and I do think there's plenty to love about it, but I can't necessarily say it's close to the top of my rankings. I do think a lot of the mechanics are really fun to play with. Things like salvage, the addition of armor, which was previously experimented in World War II Zombies by Sledgehammer, and I think it's a better system here in Cold War than it was in World War II. Removal of the perk limit solves the issue with both previous perk systems, that being crutch perks filling up all your slots, but when you're not limited on the amount of slots, then the crutch perk issue ceases to exist. Zombies dropping equipment adds a lot more interactability to the game, and I love the movement. Like, I never realized just how freeing it would be to be able to mantle over objects in Zombies. And those things definitely make Cold War Zombies enjoyable to play, but I think it's held back by several things. First and foremost, the maps and content. Only 4 round-based maps. That's not a lot. The only other Treyarch Zombies game that has that few maps is World at War. But that one kinda gets a pass because Zombies was new at the time and was just made as a fun side mode that just happened to explode in popularity. By Cold War though, Zombies was a major component of Call of Duty, at least for Treyarch. But every other Zombies entry by Treyarch had a lot more maps and just had more content in general. Which maybe I'd be a bit more forgiving of if the maps themselves were great, but they're not. The only map in this game that I actually consider particularly good is Mauerder Toten. The rest of the maps are pretty mediocre. They're not bad by any stretch of the imagination, they're certainly fun, but they're nowhere near as solid as maps that we've had in previous games. Why? Well, most of them just don't really have much to do on them, besides basic survival. Like, remember how in Black Ops 2, 3, and 4, like, there was a lot of extra optional things you could do on the maps if you want, which often rewarded you with extra tools for slaying the zombie hordes? Well, they're fairly light on that in most of these maps. Usually, it's just quests for the free Wonder Weapon, and the trial system, which was copy-pasted from Ancient Evil from Black Ops 4, which I do like that system, and I'm glad it is returned. But there aren't that many side quests to do on these maps, which, yeah, I understand that, like, the older entries, like World at War and Black Ops 1, didn't really have them, But that's just kind of what Zombies was at the time. But in Cold War, like, DM Machine, what are there to do on the map? There's the Wonder Weapon, the Loot Box quest, which just gives you a bunch of random shit you could have received otherwise anyway, and the Trials. And it's a very similar case for Firebase Z. Forsaken is a little bit better, but not by much. The only one that actually has extra shit to do on it is Mauer Toten, and that's a big part of why I like that map so much. And then, of course, there's the main Easter eggs on these maps, but again, with the exception of Mauer Toten, they're all just too easy to be fun. Like, most of these Easter eggs just don't really have anything to really challenge the player's skill. I thought Black Ops 3 and 4 did a pretty good job at making the Easter egg quests better, as I felt like they actually required skill to do, but then Cold War just makes most of them brain dead easy, with the exception of Mauer, which actually does have those more gameplay-focused steps, which I do enjoy, and then Outbreak Easter egg number 1, which is just too tedious to be fun, besides maybe the final boss. Speaking of Outbreak, I could do a whole video on my issues with it, but let me just sum up my points here. While I generally enjoy it, it falls into the exact same pitfall as most other open world games in the modern day. That being, having a collection of fun activities to do, but they're bookended by long periods where you're just running to them. And because of how open it is, it means training up zombies in the open world and staying alive isn't that difficult. But they're just enough of a presence for you to just slow down and kill them, which just fucks with the pacing overall, whereas round-based zombies usually has a consistent pacing as you have a whole bunch of zombies coming at you in a more enclosed environment at all times. I do enjoy Outbreak Survival though, which slows down the pacing by not giving you a map where everything's located, and also making health recovery tied to pickups. And I do generally enjoy it because I think it works better with that slower pace and more exploratory nature. Now, back to the maps. You could say that maybe they did want to go back to the roots and have a simple survival experience, kind of like World at War and Black Ops 1. And here lies my other problem with Cold War. It's generally just way too easy. Sure, the maps in the older Zombies games might not have had a lot of particularly engaging side quests, if they had side quests at all, but at least the basic survival was challenging there, but in Cold War it's incredibly easy, because all those mechanics I mentioned, while I do think they had the right idea, they were not properly balanced at all. You start off at the beginning of the game being able to tank 5 hits all the way up till round 10, which is plenty of time for you to get Jug. You start with a really powerful specialist ability, and you can also spawn in with literally any gun in the game that you want. And the weapon you spawn with is the only one that you can customize the attachments for. So you're more encouraged to just pick whichever weapon you think is going to serve you the best, and then just upgrade it through the tier system, rather than seeking out better weapons like you did in every previous zombie game. Ammo management is also not an issue because zombies will just straight up drop them. And I could keep going on, but honestly this Cold War section is getting too long anyway. So yeah, the fact that it's really easy and the fact that it doesn't have a lot of content is really what holds this game back for me. I mean, to be fair, when it comes to content, it does have one saving grace, and that's the fact that all the DLC is free, unlike those previous games. But if we were comparing this game with all of its DLC to previous games with all of its DLC, it has pretty much not much in comparison. Onslaught is fun for about 5 minutes and then just gets really fucking boring. And I suppose Cranked mode is fun to play every once in a while, but you can only do so on DM Machine and Firebase Z for some reason. So yeah, while I do generally enjoy Cold War, it's for all these reasons that it's only in the number 5 spot. Coming in at our number 4 spot, we have Black Ops 1. Now, if you're one of the people that thinks Black Ops 1 should be a lot higher, I completely understand. The main reason it's here is for the simple fact that, like I said in the Cold War section, I tend to prefer the more quest-style maps with lots of extra optional side content, which Black Ops 1's maps don't really have. But again, it's kinda hard to hold that against this game, considering that this is just what Zombies was at the time. And if you think this game deserves to be in the number 1 spot, I completely understand. But the reason why it inks out a victory over Cold War is because, unlike Cold War, it's actually challenging. In fact, I'd say that Black Ops 1 does difficulty balancing the best out of all the other Zombies games, as there's pretty much nothing in this game that's straight up bullshit, but you're also not really given too many overpowered mechanics either. So while all the maps in this game might be simpler maps with not that many side quests or other optional content, it does base survival really fucking well. And I think that's reflected in the map selection. This game has 6 new maps, and of those, the only one that I'd actively say is bad is Moon, because of the pure amount of bullshit on that map. But that's 1 map out of 6. And even then, that seems to be a fairly controversial opinion, because while me and a bunch of other people hate Moon, there's also a lot of people that love this map. So I suppose if you are one of those people, then yeah, I guess Black Ops 1 really doesn't have any bad maps. Kino and Ascension are easier maps, perfect for more casual play and those wanting to get better at the game. 5 is a lot more challenging, testing your resource management up until reaching the power switch, and then forces you to train in a very tight map. Call of the Dead tests your strategy, as you have to plan around George Romero since you can't kill him on a dime, making for a very interesting challenge and my favorite map in the game. And Shangri-La is one of the most difficult maps in all of Zombies, but it's not really bullshit difficulty. If you consider yourself one of the best Zombies players, then Shangri-La will offer you the ultimate challenge. Oh, and if you happen to be a fan of the World at War maps, well, they're in this game too as part of DLC 4. Except this time, they're not buggy. Black Ops 1 is really quality. And the only reason I have it this low on this list is just because of my personal preferences when it comes to zombies. I like optional side content, and Black Ops 1 doesn't really have that. Also, this is really when Easter eggs started to be added to zombies. I mean, I suppose we had the fly trap in World at War, but that was really fucking easy. Of course, most of the Easter eggs in Black Ops 1 don't really hold up all that well, considering it's just a bunch of random steps without much gameplay challenge. But if you like simple survival, then Black Ops 1 is great for you. Coming in at our number 3 spot, we have Black Ops 2. Now, I know there's this debate about which is better, Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2, because while Black Ops 1 was more consistently good, Black Ops 2 had higher highs and lower lows. Those low lows happen to be the 2 worst maps in all of Zombies, Transit and Die Rise. Well, at least in the Treyarch games prior to Vanguard, that is. And yes, they are certainly in the lowest tier of maps. But personally, I think that the rest of the maps in this game more than make up for it. While Transit and Die Rise are 2 of the worst maps in Zombies, Origins and Mob of the Dead are 2 of the best. This is where the quest style of Zombies map got its start. They tried experimenting in earlier maps in this game to try and make things more interesting than just your standard base survival. Like, that is something I can give to Transit and Die Rise. While they might not be particularly great maps, it wasn't for a lack of trying. Mob of the Dead caught lightning in a bottle, and Treyarch would go on to replicate it as the quest style of Zombies map has been widely successful for them. Personally, Origins is my pick for best map in all of Zombies, as there's so much content on that map alone. But you don't have to do it all if you don't want to. If you want to put in the effort to get the G-Strikes, you can. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. Then there's also Buried and Nuketown. Buried is a very easy map, but it's the fun sort of easy. There's a bunch of cool mechanics on that map that just make it a fun map to just chill out and relax with some friends. And I think it's an easy map done right. And then there's Nuketown, which is a more simple survival map, with a twist of the random perks. And personally, I like Nuketown for that reason. It forces you to adapt. And then there are the 3 survival maps that were taken from Transit, which I often don't hear brought up in regards to this game's content, but I feel like it's important to bring up. Yes, they were just ripped from Transit, but if you're looking for a simple survival experience, they're in those maps if you want them. Now, Farm doesn't have Pack-a-Punch, and Bus Depot doesn't have perks or Pack-a-Punch, so naturally I don't play them very often. Town, however, has perks, Pack-a-Punch, and some guns. So while Black Ops 2 might not have the strongest map selection overall, it certainly has an eclectic one for all different sorts of players. And no 2 maps really feel the same, again, besides the Transit survival maps. Perma-perks were an interesting but weird mechanic. The game also had a ranking system of sorts, but to this day, I still have no idea how it works. And this was the first game to introduce alternate game types for zombies with Grief and Turned. Turned is pretty fun for a couple minutes. It doesn't last long, and I usually don't play it often. At least I didn't play it often when Black Ops 4 was in its prime. Playing it nowadays is pretty much impossible without a private match. But Grief Mode was pretty fun. You were trying to outlast the other team, but you couldn't harm them directly, so you had to harm them indirectly by blocking their path, chucking EMP grenades at them, throwing grenades at the box so they couldn't get their weapon, downing yourself in front of the pack-a-punch machine so they can't retrieve their weapon from it, shit like that. It was really fun, and I have no idea why Treyarch has not brought it back yet. It's a really fun mode that I think is ripe for expansion. And I also think that Black Ops 2 has the best weapon selection out of all the Treyarch Zombies games. You have a wide range of really great weapons, really shitty weapons, middle-of-the-road weapons, and everything in between. Whereas I feel like games prior to Black Ops 2 lean more towards having all the weapons be shitty with a few standouts, and every game after Black Ops 2 making damn near every weapon really fucking good. It's a weapon selection that I don't think has been matched since. It's a really great Zombies game, but I do think the fact that it does have those low lows holds it back from being in the top few spots for me, but its highs are really fucking high. Coming in at our number 2 spot, and I know this is gonna be controversial, Black Ops 4. If you've been on my channel for a while, you probably know that I really love Black Ops 4 Zombies, even though most people don't hold this game in the high regard. But I think it's far better than a lot of people give it credit for. Now, there are plenty of flaws with this game, which definitely hold it back from being number 1. Among those flaws being the fact that you spawn in with a specialist weapon, Jug has been completely removed and not replaced with any other health upgrade, meaning you spawn with full health. I don't like the new point system, and Wraith Fires are really overpowered for something you spawn with. But I think the good in this game far outweighs the bad. There is so much content in Black Ops 4 Zombies. Even if you don't buy the DLC, there's 3 maps on disc, plus Rush Mode and Gauntlet Mode, and custom mutations. And then you also get 5 more maps through the DLC. There's also 4 difficulty modes for those who feel like the game is too easy or too hard. Custom Mutations allows you to tweak literally hundreds of different settings to tailor the experience to your liking, though this does come at the cost of disabling the main Easter egg quest. Rush Mode is a very fast-paced arcade-style mode where you're trying to get a high score by keeping up your combo multipliers by avoiding damage. It's really fast-paced, you don't have to worry about setting up, as everything is free, and it's great if you just want to quickly hop in and shoot some zombies. Gauntlet Mode has you going through 30 rounds, each with a challenge that you have to complete. If you go down or fail the challenge 3 times, you lose. It's a really interesting mode. The only thing I will say is that because the challenges are the same each time for any specific map, it doesn't really have too much replay value once you beat it, but still a pretty cool concept that I'd love to see expanded in the future. Then there's the maps themselves, and this is another strong suit of Black Ops 4, I think. Okay, well, Blood of the Dead is kinda just eh, and I think the same goes for Alpha Omega, but I really like the rest of them. In particular, I like the Chaos maps, as they add a lot more special enemies to the mix, which I am a huge fan of as it encourages strategy. You're no longer just mindlessly running in circles shooting the zombies over and over, but you're instead prioritizing targets, thinking about which enemies to kill first, and how doing so will affect your movement. I think the map 9 is the epitome of this, as there's plenty of different enemy types, but they're all balanced really well. And even though there's less side content on the map than I would have liked, the improvements to the core gameplay by adding these special enemies really makes it one of my favorite maps. Voyage of Despair is also pretty fun. I've warmed up a lot to this map. I love the close quarters chaotic nature of it. It feels like you're dancing with death, and you gotta use all the tools in your arsenal to their fullest potential if you want to stay alive. And quick side note, I will say that even though I feel like you spawn into the game way more powerful than you should be, once the game picks up momentum, I think it is sufficiently challenging. Classified is a simpler map, which harkens back to Black Ops 1. Like, it's got more going on than a Black Ops 1 map. It's the perfect map to just hop in, grab your shit, and slay some zombies. Dead of the Night is an amazing quest-style map, as there is a fuck ton of optional side content, which I adore. Ancient Evil is like the origins or Der Eisendrache of Black Ops 4, with 4 elemental wonder weapons that are extremely fun to use, plenty of optional side content, amazing theming, and it's just really fun. Tag der Toten is also a really fun quest-style map, as there's a lot of optional side content, new wonder weapons, an interesting challenge system, etc. And I know that a bunch of people are not huge fans of the fact that all of the Aether maps in this game were based off of previous maps, but I actually don't really mind it so much because even though they reuse some of the layout of previous maps, they are innovated and changed to look, feel, and play completely differently. These aren't remasters, they're reimaginings. Taking an old concept, but instead of refining it, does something completely new with it. Now, in the case of Blood of the Dead, I don't think it panned out particularly well, and Alpha Omega is just kind of okay, but I think Classified and Tag der Toten are fantastic. And I love all 4 of the Chaos maps as well. Weapon kits come back from Black Ops 3, but they've been expanded, with my favorite addition to them, the Operator mods, which can completely change how a weapon functions, and I could go on and on about this game. And I know this is probably going to make the Zombies community want my head on a pike, but I'm just gonna say it. I actually prefer the Black Ops 4 perk system over the previous one. There, I said it. My reason for that being, my perk selection isn't restricted by what's on the map. The modifier actually adds quite a bit of new strategy, as you need to consider which modifier effect is going to be the most useful to you, and most importantly, it mostly fixed the crutch perk issue. I say mostly because Dying Wish is still a crutch perk, but that's pretty much the only one. Which kind of surprises me, because personally, I'd say Victorious Tortoise would have been a crutch perk, but surprisingly few people seem to run it. Fixing the crutch perk issue, which was, damn near everybody would run the same perks and the other perks wouldn't get a chance, whereas in this system, it's a lot more preference-oriented, which I think is a good thing. Of course, you don't have to agree with me. If you don't like this game, that's fine. You don't need to like something just because I do, and conversely, you don't need to hate something just because I do. But I digress. Anyways, coming in at the number 1 spot, I wonder who it could be. It's kind of a meme at this point that Black Ops 3 is reputed as being the best Zombies game by the entire community, and while I do think the community does tend to overlook some of the flaws in this game, at the same time, I have to agree that overall, it is the best. Mainly, I think it has the strongest map selection out of any Treyarch Zombies game. There were 5 new maps added in this game, and I don't think there is a miss on any of them. I used to think that Zetsubou was a bad map, but in the past year or 2, I've really turned around on this map. Like, I actually love it now. I'd say my least favorite map of the new ones that were added was Revelations, and even I think that map is pretty good. And then, of course, you have maps like Shadows of Evil, Der Eisendrache, and Goron Krovi, which are often in the discussion of the best maps of all time. And I actually love Zetsubou because of the sheer amount of optional side content on the map. I'll admit, it can be kind of daunting for a new casual player who doesn't like looking up shit on how to do stuff on the maps. Like, things like Power and Pack-a-Punch on that map are kind of tricky to figure out without a guide. But as somebody who loves the optional side content, I am a big fan of this map. Shadows of Evil is also a really fun map that's pretty challenging, even if I do think the spacing in some areas could use a little work. But it's a really fun map with a great aesthetic, fun gameplay, and amazing wonder weapon. Der Eisendrache basically took the Origins formula and did it again. While I do have a preference for Origins because it simply has more side content than Der Eisendrache is still a really good map, and I would say that I think Der Eisendrache is a bit more accessible than Origins, and they did structure the bow quests better than the staff quests. Goron Krovi is another amazing map. Again, tons of optional side content, generally pretty challenging, fun wonder weapon, and then Revelations was like a cool little compilation. It had a bunch of maps that were all stitched together in a very elegant way, and is basically like a celebration of what Zombies has accomplished up to that point. Admittedly, the map is a little too easy, but it's really fun. Additionally, there's also The Giant, which is a remake of Der Riese from World at War. There is new story bits, and they changed the main Easter egg in terms of the location and reward. Oh, and the perks have random spawns now, but besides that, it's the same map. But that's not all, folks! Because to my knowledge, Black Ops 3 is the first and only Call of Duty game to have received a 5th DLC expansion. Zombies Chronicles, which faithfully remasters 8 classic Zombies maps from the ground up for this game. While I generally think that the original versions of these maps play better than the remastered versions simply because they were made for their original games and not Black Ops 3, they're still really fun. The only ones that I'd say suffer majorly from the transition to Black Ops 3 are Shangri-La and Chronicles Origins, as Shangri-La was just really built heavily around Black Ops 1, and so putting it in Black Ops 3 didn't necessarily work too well. And then Origins, I have no idea what the hell Treyarch did, but it's just not as good as the Black Ops 2 original. But the rest of the maps still play really well. And personally, I think Chronicles Moon is actually significantly better than the original because it fixes several of the issues I had on that map. Meaning, with all the DLC, Black Ops 3 offers the most amount of maps in any Zombies game. Is it the most content? That's debatable. There are more maps, though it doesn't have as many features as some other games like alternate game types. But you know what it does have? An overarching progression system. First Treyarch Zombies entry to actually do that. I mean, Black Ops 2 kinda had a ranking system, but it was so esoteric that I honestly have no idea how it works. This time, you can level up and unlock weapon kits, which allow you to customize the attachments of the guns you get in-game. While it doesn't necessarily boost the weapon too significantly, it's enough of a bonus for you to want to grind for them. And then there's the Gobblegum system, which I think is a really cool system as it allows for temporary bonuses to be added to the game, and they could add ideas that wouldn't really work for the perk system. My issue with the Gobblegums, though, is that because this was released during the height of loot boxes, of course Activision had to monetize the shit out of them. And the Mega Gobblegums are straight up game-breaking, to be honest. Now, I could honestly do an entire video talking about the Gobblegum, so I'm just gonna give my opinion on it here. I think the classic Gobblegums are great, and they're a nice addition. But the Mega Gobblegums kinda hurt the game because of the fact that they are overpowered, coupled with the fact that they're tied to a monetization scheme. It's a predatory system that tempts you with in-game advantages to get you to spend more money. And somebody who does spend money on racking up a bunch of Mega Gobblegums is going to have an inherent advantage over somebody who doesn't. Meaning there's always that question, did this person use Mega Gobblegums, or did they not? Because something like round 50 without Mega Gobblegums is pretty impressive, but round 50 with Mega Gobblegums really isn't. And specifically, I'm referring to the more powerful Mega Gobblegums. I think some of the less powerful Mega Gobblegums, like, say, Unquenchable or Respin Cycle, are fine. But then you have shit like Perkaholic or Shopping Free, which kind of break the game. Alright, I'm just gonna stop talking about the Gobblegums here because, again, I could make an entire video on my thoughts on the Gobblegums. But yeah, classic Gobblegum's great, Mega's not so much. If there's another criticism I have to make about this game, it's the fact that the difficulty balancing is a little lopsided, because you have really overpowered mechanics like multiple Pack-a-Punch, which is a new feature in this game, which I love the idea of it. You put your Pack-a-Punch gun back in the machine and it gets an elemental effect. An effect that's infinite damage, by the way. So you have shit like multiple Pack-a-Punch and the Gobblegums, which really makes the game pretty easy. But then you have the actual zombies themselves, which are far more aggressive in this game than they are in any other Treyarch Zombies entry. I swear it's like all the zombies smoked a fat sack of crack before you entered the game. They spread out pretty far, they attack at the speed of light, and you can't really juke around them like you could in the Xbox 360 COD games, which is a shame. But ultimately, the gameplay is still really fucking fun. The maps are amazing. Oh, and did I mention infinite jump sliding? Admittedly, that might be a little bit of a broken mechanic as it kind of negates the need for stamina, but damn it, it's fun. Alright, I know I've just said a bunch of negative things about Black Ops 3, and it might make my take on it seem more negative than it is, but the fact of the matter is I love Black Ops 3 Zombies. It's my favorite of all of them. The good far outweighs the bad here. I just only feel like it's fair to point out the negatives when I'm also pointing out the positives. But with that, I'm gonna conclude the video here. Again, this is just my opinion, and if you got to the end of the video, you are an absolute legend. So what do you guys think? How would you rank these games from worst to best, and why would you do that? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what you think of my ranking. Anyways, that's it. Peace!